Hey everyone, since we didn't really have any day in class this week, I did want to show you what I would have done in class. Even though we're going to be doing task 2 together on Monday, I still wanted you this will be a little more than what's on there because I want you to learn some more concepts. But if you had gone into week 2 and read through all the prepare information in week 2's task, you probably would have been fine as well. But I do want to do a little bit with these two things here, just so you have a little bit more than we would have by just doing the tasks together. So I'm going to have this open because we might grab some code here, but I am going to go to VS Code and we're going to stay in the sandbox and we're going to add the week 2 HTML, and I'm also going to add a week 2 JS, and for our week 2 HTML we can do that little shortcut, get our little boilerplate here, call this one comparison and the DOM. Okay, and we always want to connect it to our file, our JavaScript file. So I'll put it up in the head this time. Last time I left it in the main, or in the, right before the ending body. And this time I'll put it up here. If we do it this way, we always have to put defer, right? Because it's going to read the JavaScript before the HTML. And this time it really does matter because we're going to have references to the HTML elements, and it will not recognize them if we don't do that. All right, so let's go ahead and do a few comparisons. So we do have it attached. Oh, you know what? Sorry, guys. Week. That's what we named it. You guys caught that. All right, so week2.js, because that's what we named it right here. Okay. Inside that week2.js, we're going to just do some really simple comparisons to begin with. And for example, we'll just console log it for now. And if we said, 5 is equal to 5, we should get returned true from this. So it should console log whatever condition this returns, true or false. Now, notice there's 2 equal signs because when it's 1 equal sign, it's the assignment operator. When, for example, like when we had our we're going to use this here in a minute, age. That would be assigning the value of 13 to a variable. So that's the assignment operator. So when we say equal to, then we actually have to put 2 equal signs. So obviously, if we look at this, we're going back to HTML and opening it with Live Server. In the console, we should see true, right? Don't worry about the favicon. We don't have favicons right now. So that one is returning true. The 5 is equal to 5. If you put this as a 5 as a string, it's still going to be true here. But if you want it to have a very strict equal to, there is 3 equal signs. That's strictly equal to, not just equal to. So with just 2, JavaScript is saying, yeah, they're probably the same, even though one's a character and one's a number. I'm going to be pretty flexible with this, and I'm going to say that's true. But if you want to be really strict with your program, you can use 3 equal signs, and then it's very strict. If I save that, you'll notice that it's false. So that is a kind of a different thing with JavaScript that you need to be aware of. Now, of course, there's the greater than and less than kind of stuff. So if you say 5 is greater than 9, that will obviously be false. If 5 is definitely less than 9, that would be true. So these are all just conditions. So basically, is 5 less than or equal to 9 true? It's still less than or equal to. You can have different combinations there, but mainly that triple and single would be what you'd be looking for there. So I'll leave it with kind of the interesting one, just so we kind of have that in there. And maybe we'll put a little, try 2 equal signs. Yeah. Just when you look back, you can kind of see what that was. All right, conditionals. So now we can use these comparisons as a true or false conditional, and with our true and false conditional. For example, an if statement, which you guys probably had in past programming classes. In JavaScript, you put your condition or your comparison or whatever you're looking at to be true or false inside parens, and we'll use this your age that we had up here. So we'll say if your age is greater than 17, which we already know that it's going to be false, right, because it's 13, then if that's true, only if that's true, do what's inside these curly braces. So we'll just throw something onto the console log, which will never run, but you can vote if you're over 17 years old. Now, if I save this, nothing comes on the console because this was false, and so nothing inside the curly braces will run. It will just start on whatever is below that. So that's how your if works. So then if we change this to I'm 18 years old, then it should come on here and say you can vote. Don't worry about my slow network message there, but you can see that you can vote. Okay, so let's turn it back to 13 and let's do an else. So now we're saying, okay, if this is false, then do this. And if that's false, then you're going to say console log. Instead of doing nothing, you're going to say you cannot vote. So what we're saying here is if this condition is true, then you're going to put on the console you can vote. If this is false, it's going to jump down here, and everything else, if this is false, then you're going to do this. So now it should say you cannot vote. If I'm 13, I cannot vote. Okay, so probably you've seen an if clause. I just wanted to show you with the syntax of JavaScript. We'll get into more detailed ones later, but just a quick little example there. Let's grab one that's a little more involved in our homework, and we're going to go into the prepare section first. So you probably saw this one, but I wanted to just show it really fast. This one. Okay, so this one's got a little extra in it. This one has another condition. So it's got an if, else if, and an else. So it's going to look at this one first, and it's going to say, oh, let's make a num cells just so we have it. So let's say let num cells, camel case, be assigned 100. Okay, so it's going to come in here and it say, hey, is num cells less than or equal to 50? No, it's greater than. So that's going to be false. It's going to skip over this one. It's going to look at the next one, and it's going to say, is it less than or equal to 1,000? Now remember, it already knew it wasn't less than 50. So this is actually saying if the num cells is greater than or equal to 50, which we already went through, and the num cells is less than or equal to 100. And this is where ours will be true, because it's between 50 and 1,000. And so we should get this number of cells. Then if it was over 1,000, basically, else, everything over 1,000, you'd get a good number of cells. So let's test it out. Let's save that. Go back to our, so average number of cells, that's where it's showing up here. Okay, so if we did happen to have 1,001 cells, we should get that a good number of cells, right? Or if we had 10 cells, we should get that first condition, which was way too, which T-O-O, too few cells. Okay, so there you go. Just a little more one with an else if, where this one didn't have an else if. Okay, we'll see those again. All right, I would have had you then take some time in class to come up with your own, showing if they were, less than kindergarten age, tell them that they are not in school. If they're in between 5 years old and 18, They could be in secondary school. Else, you could be in college, and I'd have you guys kind of do it yourself. So if you want to pause and try it, that's fine. But it would have been very, very similar to this. But anyway, let's not worry about that on the video, though, so we don't make it too long. I guess I could hurry. I'll just hurry and type it out. So if, let's do, we already had your age, which was 13, so we'll just use that one. If your age, was it camel case? Yep. Is less than 5, which is not going to be true in our case, right? Because he was 13. Then we're going to console log not in school. Else if, oh, we need a condition with this one, sorry guys. Else if your age, and I'll kind of show it a little different here. I'll put both of those in. If it's greater than 5, and we're using the symbol for and is 2 ampersands, your age is less than 18. We could have done it similar to how they did it here, just assuming they were already over 5 by the time I got here. But you could be very explicit about that and put it this way. Then you could say, well, if you're between the ages of 5 and 18, you're probably in secondary school, like kindergarten through senior year, right? So you're in secondary school. Then anyone older than that would fall into this else. So anyone over 18, or actually 18 or over, you could say could be in college. They may not be in college, but they could be because they're old enough. And that's kind of the idea we're looking at. So now if I do this, 13-year-old would be in secondary school, a 19-year-old could be in college. A 4-year-old would be not in school. So I'm saving it really quick each time just so you guys know with the Command or Control S. All right. That's what I would have you do on your own. Let's try, see another one from here. Okay, so I just wanted to quickly show you can do a very similar thing. These switch statements are for when you have a really long if clause. So you would have more than just two different conditions here, or 3. If you didn't use switch, it would be like, if it's this age, do this. Else if, else if, else if. Again and again and again, you have these really long if clauses. They fit a little better syntax-wise inside what's called a switch statement. And this is an example of a switch statement. So we have a capital letter A here that's getting assigned to grade. We're initializing GPA points to 0 to begin with. So we have these 2 variables set up. And grade is actually the value coming into this switch. So it's saying, hey, let's look at grade and compare them to each of these cases. So this is kind of like your first condition. It's going to say, hey, is in this case, I guess, is A equal to what grade is? If that's true, they do have grade of an A. They get the GPA points gets assigned 4. Break. Now this happens inside the cases, so otherwise it would sit and go through all the rest of them. But once it finds the one case that's true, it can just break out and go straight down to the code that's underneath the curly brace. So that's what break is for. You don't need break on default because it's already the last one. So for example, let's go ahead and console log that GPA points. And go back to here. And we'll see, because we had grade A, and then we have GPA of 4, right? So if they had a B here, and I save it again, you should see the GPA of 3. Of course, this is a good example of where we could go in and put all the rest of the letters, right? I don't know why he didn't already have them. Let me see. Sorry guys, I'm trying to get it to line up, but it's not lining up very well. Right, so you could put C here and have 2 and D for 1, and default is basically F. I don't think you get a negative. Maybe we'll leave that 0. I don't know. Anyway, so you can kind of see what would happen there. If you got a C, you'd have a 2. If you got an F, you would have 0 on your GPA. So here's an interesting thing though. If I put lowercase a, it's going to give me a 0 because it really is case sensitive. That does not match capital A. So it's going to go down to the defaults. Okay, so let's just quickly look at the logic one more time. So if I had C in here, it would come in here and say, okay, grade is C. Is it A? Nope. Is it B? Nope. Is it C? Yes. So assign this and do this stuff like what we had inside the curly braces up here. Reassign GPA points to, and then break out of it and come down here below the curly brace and console log it. So let me save it, and we should see 2. Okay, so that's a switch statement. I did want to point out how to get random numbers. Brother Thompson does have an example of a game this week. I'm not going to require you guys to do that game. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. I think in his Ponder section under operators, he has this little ammo and ship thing. I think it uses random numbers. So I did want to just quickly show random numbers. You do not have to do this assignment. I thought it was a little too difficult for this level of where we're at, but you're welcome to look through that. Those of you that want a little bit of a challenge, he does have some little solutions and things you can look at. So nothing you guys need to do though, but it did use random numbers, so I did want to kind of go over that. So let's do random numbers, because this is something you'll use quite a lot. So in order to get a random number, let's just console log a random number. You're going to put math with a capital M, random, and 2 parens. Now notice we've been using these different methods. We're going to be using quite a few of these. So this is the random number method, and it's using the math object. So for example, we've been using the console as an object, and then we've been using log with a parenthesis. So this is actually a method, a log method that runs on the console object. So we're going to be seeing this a little bit more here in just a minute, but there's a lot of different objects that you can have these set properties and methods for. So this just happens to be a set method called random that's used on the math operator. And what it's going to give us, if we save that, go back to our page, you should see this number come up that is anywhere from between 0 and 1. So you're going to get some number between 0 and 1 just randomly. And that's what it's giving us. So now, if we wanted to do like a heads or tails, right? So if you think about the number between 0 and 1, halfway between that would be 0.5, right? 0.5 would be halfway between 0 and 1. Or, yeah, sorry, 0 and 1. This is giving us a decimal between 0 and 1. Okay, so knowing that 0.5 is halfway between those two, we could do, and again, this is something I would have had you guys do in class if we'd had all Monday and Wednesday, is make a coin toss, right? So heads or tails. If 0.5 is halfway between, we could do something like, and if you guys can pause it now and try it on your own, see if you can figure out a console log heads or tails depending on the random number they get. Okay, so let's set up a variable, I guess, before we hop into this, and let's say random number, our num is equal to math.random, and that's going to assign it some decimal between 0 and 1. Now we can say if our num is greater than 0.5, then tell them they got heads. Else, all the rest, so anything greater than 0.5, or less than 0.5, sorry, is going to be tails. And you could have had it swapped, it doesn't really matter. You can also console log what the decimal is, kind of see what those are. But if you sit and refresh your page again and again, you can, if you do it enough times, you should get around 50% for both. But that's how you use a random number. So, and I just threw it into another if else, but and then you can also look up easily, you know, if you want to do a dice 1 through 5 or 1 through 6, you can look up how to do that. But I did want to show that quickly. Okay, I don't think much of that is on your task that you need to turn that we're going to be doing in class, but it's definitely something you needed to know with JavaScript in general. The rest of the lesson that I'm going to be videoing is definitely going to be on your homework. So if you haven't been paying attention, start paying attention now. Okay, we're going to be talking about the DOM, and that stands for Document Object Model, meaning pretty much manipulating elements on the page. And I say manipulating because you can change them, you can add them, you can do all sorts of things with the HTML elements on your page. Right now we don't have anything inside body, so we're going to type some in there so that we can start actually getting output on the screen instead of just the console, which is going to be exciting. So let's go back to the HTML, and inside of body, let's go ahead and add an H1. Then we're going to have it say week 2. Okay, then we're going to also have an unordered list, and it's going to be empty. We're not going to put any content in that because I want to show you how that works. Then we're going to have a paragraph. And we're going to add another paragraph. This time this paragraph is going to have an attribute in there called an ID. So we're going to put, before we end the p tag, we're going to put ID, and then in quotes, we're just going to call it P2 for paragraph 2. And then we'll end the opening p tag, and we'll put, this is a paragraph with an ID. And I'm also going to, in your homework, you're going to have to put an image of yourself on the page. So we're going to see how to do that. The image tag has an attribute called source, or SRC. For now, we don't have that image yet, so I'm going to put a hashtag in there inside the quotes. And I'm going to have an alternative text called photo. And it doesn't need an ending tag because everything for the image is going to be put into this SRC here in a minute. And we're going to do that dynamically with JavaScript. Those of you that know HTML, we'll actually change this dynamically with JavaScript. And we're going to have a div with an ID. This is a little confusing, an ID of class. You can have classes. And it's going to be empty. So we're going to leave that one empty, nothing in between the two tags. And we'll have a span with a class of food. Okay. This one is going to hold the classes that you're taking right now. This one will hold favorite foods if we have time, if we get to that point. All right, I don't want to make this video too long. Okay, now how do we get, if I save this and look at our page, we do see the 2 paragraphs coming in, and week 2 is coming in. Photo's broken because we haven't changed that hashtag yet. And then we don't see any of the empty HTML, and that's fine, that's normal. Okay, let's start manipulating it and doing stuff with those elements in JavaScript. Okay, so we want to get some output onto the page. We look at the document object. And document also has methods and properties that go with it. So one of the properties that go with it, we're going to use the dot notation that shows we're going to use a property or a method, and it's called query selector, and it's a camel case, so the S is capitalized. And then you type in these quote marks after the parens what you're targeting on the page. So if I'm wanting to target this week 2 and change what text is in there, I have to say, hey, I'm looking for this H1. Sorry, not H2. So you would just type in H1. So you just put the element's name inside the quotes. And then what do you want to do with that? I want to change the text content property of that. So another dot notation. And I want to assign that text content to say new output. So what's going to happen here is it's going to replace week 2 with the string new output. So look at your document, find H1, change its text content property to be assigned this new string. Now if I save this, watch, week 2 is going to change to new output. So inside of JavaScript, we just changed that. Students will say, well, why didn't you just put new output to begin with right here if that's what you wanted? Well, we haven't got into events yet. So for example, maybe you don't want something to change until a user pushes a button, or until a user makes a decision, or until something else loads. So later this is going to be used with user behavior and user interaction. Right now we're just showing it, just change it right off the bat as soon as the JavaScript runs, so, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But it will later when we're waiting to do this. Maybe it's inside of an if. Maybe it doesn't change unless some condition is true, right? So we're just learning it today. It might not make a whole lot of sense why we're changing all this text, but I want to at least kind of show you these DOM methods and properties. Okay. We can also target not only by the element name, but we can target by these IDs and these classes. So if I give my week 2 an ID of main title with an underscore, save that, I can target the same thing. In fact, let's just copy a new one. So we have the old one with the element. And we'll say hashtag main title. And those of you that know CSS, it's kind of handy because IDs are referred to in CSS with the hashtag as well, so it's the same kind of thing. This time let's put hello world. So again, it's gonna show, it's gonna initially bring up week 2, which will quickly be replaced so fast we won't even see it by new output, and then right away it'll be replaced by hello world. So you'll see that it goes straight there because it really did kind of go through those other 2 really quick. In fact, if you refresh, I saw week 2 really fast. Anyway, so you can also target a different rather than just put the element name, because maybe for some reason you've got more than one H1, which you shouldn't, but for paragraph, you've got more than one paragraph, but you only want to affect one of them, then you need to know how to target them with an ID or a class name. So we're using an ID there. All right, let's put something in our unordered list. So this one's a little different. This one's going to be using a different, instead of text content, it's going to be using inner HTML. So you can say document, query selector, and this time we can target our UL either by name, or if we gave it a class or an ID, we could target that way, but I don't think we gave it, no class or ID. So we're going to say ul.inner HTML. Watch the spelling there. HTML is all capitalized. And then we're going to assign that some HTML. So that's a little different from just a text content. So we can actually put HTML tags in it when you use inner HTML. So we could say, hey, I want a new list item, and I can put whatever the content for that list item is, and then end it that. And if you save that, you will now see your unordered list come up here with a new bullet point. So that's a list item. Okay. So you could add another one. Right, so it's going to take whatever HTML you have in there and put it onto the screen with inner HTML. Excuse me. All right, you also, let's see, let's go to the image. So in your homework, you're going to have a placeholder image that you want to replace with yours. Our image doesn't really have a placeholder, but it does have an SRC that's not doing anything. It's just broken. So we're going to go ahead and put a picture in there. If you want to quickly grab a picture, this person does not exist. I don't know. If you've got a picture of yourself you want to grab, you can save image. I don't know if it'll get the same person. Let's go into where your folder is in your sandbox. And I'm going to make an images. I should have done this in VS Code. An images folder. And I'm going to call this student. And I noticed it named it JPEG, so I'll have to remember that because sometimes JPEGs are just JPG. Okay, so now that I've got a picture, if you can see, I added this images and it's got that student.jpg. So you'll have a similar setup in your task. You'll have this images in week 2 that has the placeholder. You're going to put your picture in there as well and change it. So if I want to change that image, I can set some different, I can use a set attribute method with that. So let me turn this back off so we've got more room. And okay. So let me just put the image. Okay, so in our homework, it's going to have you put it into a variable first, which you don't have to, but something like this, like if that's not me, definitely, I'm just going to put student. I am not that cute. Okay, and here we're going to put the pathway. It's inside the images folder, and it's called student, whoops, EG, is what mine was called. And so that's basically just putting a string into a variable, but it is the pathway of where that picture is going to be. Then you want to grab that image tag from right here. So we're using the DOM and we're going to say, hey, query selector, and we only have one image, so we'll just target it by the image name, and we're going to say set attribute. That's a new method we haven't seen yet. The set attribute method takes 2 parameters. It takes what attribute are you trying to change? We're trying to change the SRC, comma, second one, what are you changing it with? Now here's where I could have just typed in this whole string. But since we've already got it in a variable, we can just put student, which is the variable. So we didn't have to set this up. I could have just put this whole string with the quotes right here, and it would have worked too. But in your homework, it has you separated out, so I thought I'd show you that way. Now, if we go back to my page, you will see, oh, it's not the same person, but it's still a cute person. Okay. And again, it's kind of big. Yours might be big too. You can also set a width attribute the same way. So targeting the same image, but this time we're going to target, we're actually not changing it, we're adding it this time because we don't have a width at all here. And so we could say, well, I want it to be 300 or 300 pixels wide. Okay. You could also set an attribute alt and change it to a different value. Right now our alt says photo, but you could change that as well. So that's how you would use set attribute method to change different attributes inside of your elements. Pretty cool, huh? So you'll be changing a placeholder image that you guys have. Let me just show you. Let me just see if I can bring it up really fast. This is your homework, what your homework looks like. Yeah, so it's going to have this placeholder image. You're going to replace it very similar to what we just did with your own picture. Okay. All right. Okay, you're going to have to, they're in the footer of this homework, you're going to have this copyright symbol right here. And you're going to be changing, let me just look at it really fast. In your footer, you're going to have a span called year. And it's got nothing in it. There's opening and closing tag. And then, so you're going to be assigning this span the year so that the current year shows up in the footer. You don't want to just, this is a good example of why you wouldn't want to just put 2024 in there, because next year you're going to have to go in there and change your code. Is there a way to just put the current year all the time in the footer and have it update dynamically with JavaScript? Yes. And that's kind of the idea. So let's do an example on here. So let's see. We'll have our hello world turn into a date. You're going to have that span called year. In fact, we'll do it together in class, so it won't matter. Okay, so let's set up a new variable called date, and we're going to assign it a new date object, and you do have to capitalize D. And so if I was to console log that date, you'll see like a really long kind of a string of all this date information. So the week, the day, year, time, what standard time you're in. Okay, so we just want a piece of that. In our footer, we only want the 2024. So there is another thing you can do to that new date that now has that long big string of information. We can assign, let's make a new, we want just the year. So we're going to make a new variable called year, and we're going to take that date and we're going to use the get full year method on it. And what that's going to do is it's going to extract out just the full year, the 2024. So now if we console log year, then we should get just the 2024. So now how do we get that on our page? We could do a very similar thing like we did up here. And we can, instead of assigning it a string, we'll assign it that new year. And now we'll see we have 2024 in our H1. Okay, so you'll be targeting hashtag year. So in your homework, it would be hashtag year here, right? So anyway, that's how you get the 2024 for your footer. So I wanted to cover that one. There is a cool way, and I don't think you'll have to do this on your homework, but just so you know, you can completely create a new element from scratch. We kind of did that here, right? We did that here for sure. This is a new LI element that we did not even have using inner HTML. So sometimes it's super easy just to do that. But there is a way without using inner HTML to create a brand new element on your page that was not there before. So I'm going to put the steps here. This is kind of the old school long way to create an element, but I wanted to show you this. You won't have to do this probably on your homework. Okay, so first we're going to create a new element. So we might want a new paragraph. I'm going to call the variable new para, and we're going to assign it the document object, and we're going to put create element ID, or create element method. Inside the parameter here, you have to tell it which kind of element you're making, a paragraph. And you save that, nothing really happens because you need to do these other two steps. So we created the element. Now we're going to add some content to it. We're going to say new para.text content. We've seen this one before. And we're going to assign it some, this is my new paragraph. I'm going to put dynamic so we know, because we're creating it dynamically from scratch. Okay. That's 2. We added the content. Still not showing up on the page even if I save it, because now we have to say, put it on the page, number 3. So then we'll say document dot body. So the whole, attach this to the body, this body part, and it's going to attach, always attach it at the bottom. Append child. So this is a new method we haven't seen. What child do we want to put on there? What child do we want to append? We want to append the new para that now is created and has content, and now we just put it onto the page. Now if I save it, you'll notice it comes at the very bottom here. So you could append it to different parts of the page. You could have a div and you could append it to the bottom of a div and not just always have it at the bottom of the page. But that's one way you can create an element from scratch. Okay. Yeah, we could have done the same thing with the inner HTML, right? So we could have something like let para, oops. Okay, now let me make sure I'm, okay. Notice we don't have something with the class of para. Okay, sorry, this example needs another one. You guys can just watch this if you want. We're gonna give this one a class of para. So not quite from scratch because we've got an empty one on this one. So I'm gonna save that. Oops, I deleted my ending tag here. Okay. Okay, so this one's saying, hey, grab that with the class of para. This time it's a dot because it's a class and not an ID. And then we can say, okay, take para and do the inner HTML and assign it. We're going to put an H1 inside of a paragraph. I don't know why we'd want that, but we could do a span. This is more text. Okay. And it's right here. So we put an H1, so it's a little bigger. But you can kind of create from scratch that way as well, because this was not something that existed at all, this H1, and then all of a sudden we have it. Okay, maybe not the best example because I don't like how it was inside of a paragraph, but yeah. Okay. All right, we'll talk about functions later. Let's do arrays really fast because you're going to need an array for your homework. Sorry, this video is getting a little long, but this is 2 days worth of stuff I've got to quickly go through just so you can see it. Okay, you're going to have an array of your favorite foods for your homework. We're going to just do an array with some classes in it. So I have an array, a variable. It's going to hold an array called classes. You create an array which is multiple values for one storage location, which is called an array. And I'm just going to put some of my classes, there's ours, and then between them I'll put a comma, and then maybe another class, comma, WDD 130. Oh, I forgot my quotes around that one. These are all strings. This is going to be a string array. And then we'll put, let's see, what's another one of my classes? CIT. Okay, so there's some classes. You're going to have like favorite foods that you'll do on yours. And if we console log this array, you'll see all of those values show up as an array here, right? With 0 indexing, 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's do a few things. So it's going to have you add some favorite food. Then it's going to say add another favorite food onto your list. and it wants you to do that. So let's just think about how we add things to an array. We could, before we add it to it, let's just look at maybe one of these items. So if we put 2 here in square brackets, classes, it's actually going to show WDD 130 because it's 0 indexed array. So if you look at how it outputted here, 121b is 0, CIT 111 is 1, 2, 3. So even though there's 4, your indexing goes to 3 because the first one's 0. So when we say, hey, console, oh wow, I really messed up here, guys. Sorry, console log classes 2, it's going to be 0, 1, 2. So if I save that, you'll see that WDD 130 comes up. Okay, you can also reassign it. So I'm not adding one this time, but I can reassign a value just to that one area, and I can say I want it to be WD 230 now. And then if we console log classes again underneath, we'll now see that WD 130 was replaced with 230. Okay. Now let's do what your homework is going to have you do. It's going to say, hey, add a favorite food at the end. So we're going to add a class to the end of ours. So we're going to say the name of the array dot push. So it's going to add to the end this new string, in quotes, CIT 222. And I'll save that, and we don't really see anything until we console log classes again. So I'm going to copy that. And now we can see that it added CIT 222 at the end. Now we have 5 values. Okay, so I'll have you add one. It's going to also have you take one off of the beginning. That's called shift. And this time, oh, actually, you don't need to put it there. It knows, because it's right there, shift. So it doesn't need a parameter because it knows it's going to take one off the beginning. And it doesn't need a value to take one off the beginning. So, again, I'm going to have to console log classes under here so it shows it. And it should have taken off our class, right? Because ours was at the beginning. And yep, it did. So now it took this one off, and it's just showing CIT 111 at the end. You can remove one from the end of the array. So shift was taking it off the beginning. So if we want to remove CIT 354, we can say classes pop. And that will be at the end, removing from the end of the array. And again, I'm going to have to console log it if we want to see that. Save that, and you should see now. Wait, what was at the end? Hold on. Let me comment these out really fast with Command or Control / save this. Yeah. Okay. So at the end of ours was CIT 222. That's because we added it. That's why. Okay. So now we shouldn't see CIT 222 anymore. We uncomment that, run it again. Yeah, so now that CIT 222 that we added is gone. Okay, so it will kind of have you play around with the different food that you're going to be adding to your homework. Okay, that was a lot and a really long video, but that's what I would have gone over Monday and Wednesday in class, and I would have been a lot slower because we would have had 2 full hours. So just slow me down on the video, pause it, whatever. But with all that, you should be ready to do task 2 with me in class on Monday. Thanks, guys.